can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two.
Hey, folks, welcome back. This is Chris in central Pennsylvania. You're with the Colonel once again. So is President Trump trolling Denmark, or is he dead serious about acquiring Greenland? If so, it would hardly be the first ever acquisition of land by the United States, either by treaty or direct purchase. My bet is that he's serious about acquiring Greenland. Whatever the case, many Americans and at least a few Greenlanders were amused at the recent arrival of Donald Trump Jr. for a stopover in Greenland. Where he was greeted warmly by many Greenlanders. Folks he met on the ground were all smiles. Ground crew, the youth, everywhere he went. Very interesting stopover in Greenland for the son of the president.
Okay, we're here in Greenland with Don Jr.
Everyone wants to be on TikTok.
What do you guys think of America?
Great.
Love America, and you love Trump?
Yes, of course.
The youth of Greenland, Don.
We're hearing a lot of it, guys. We're hearing a lot of it.
So, like, if you could tell Trump anything, what would it be?
Buy us.
Buy Greenland?
Buy Greenland.
Why do you want Trump to buy Greenland?
Because we don't want to be colonized by Danish government anymore.
Well, folks, on YouTube and on social media, suddenly everybody's an expert on Greenland. It's comical. It really is. People go and read a few lines from, Wikipedia post, or they read a news article from one of the media outlets, and suddenly they know everything about Greenland. Well, my interest in Greenland dates back to the time I was a kid. I read Jane Smiley's book when it came out on the Greenlanders, which was fascinating, historical fiction. Really found it fascinating. And it just really enthralled me with what happened in Greenland, the history of the Viking settlements there. And I followed the story of these North Atlantic islands for my entire life. It's not news to me. In 1804, the United States bought the Louisiana Purchase from a cash-strapped Napoleon. And Jefferson was called crazy for the purchase. Oh, what a brilliant purchase that was at less than 3 cents an acre. What a deal. Later acquisitions included Seward's Folly, the purchase of Alaska from Russia, and the Gadsden Purchase in the Southwest. Now, Alaska was not the only territory that Secretary of State William Seward was interested in. America has, of course, long been interested in buying Greenland. In 1867, Seward explored the possibility of buying Greenland and possibly even Iceland. However, congressional inaction may have been one of Congress's biggest goof-ups ever in not moving forward with the potential purchase. And again, in 1946, the Truman administration sought to acquire Greenland, offering Denmark the princely sum at the time of $100 million, which they promptly rejected. Also, in his first tour as president, Trump briefly floated the Greenland idea, but was dismissed by his political and media critics. Now Greenland is self-governing and might go for outright independence from Denmark. If so, what Copenhagen thinks will no longer matter, and Greenlanders can decide for themselves what path to take.
Here in Greenland, we need to have some growth. We need to have some economic growth and diversify our economy. And of course, we welcome our strong partners, like-minded nations as first. But if they don't invest, there's a lot of companies who also want to invest in this country.
So why Greenland? Its location between the United States, Russia, and Europe makes it strategic for both economic and defense purposes, especially as melting sea ice has opened up the Northwest Passage through the Arctic. It's also the location of the northernmost U.S. military base.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time.
So let's talk about national security. With concerns over Russia and China transiting the Northwest Passage, conducting espionage, and potentially interdicting our own shipping, the U.S. has legitimate national security concerns. The United States operates the Pitufik Space Base, previously known as the Thule Air Base, where the 821st Space Base Group is stationed. Now, that location is home to a substantial portion of our global network of missile warning sensors of Space Delta Force, and space surveillance, space control sensors of Space Delta II, providing space awareness and advanced missile detection capabilities to NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, the United States Space Force, and to our joint partners. Now, as far as economic security with the Northwest Passage, protecting the Atlantic sea lanes, and potentially having access to a host of abundant mineral deposits are reasons why the U.S. has economic interest here. Now, those mineral deposits include rubies, uranium, aluminum, nickel, platinum, tungsten, and copper. Potential oil and gas exploitation remain tantalizing prospects as well. However, Greenland banned all new exploration for oil and gas in 2021. Let's see if they reopen it. Now, even though Greenland is not part of the European Union, Brussels has been urging Greenland to ban China from exploiting rare earth elements. However, Greenland has refused to do so thus far, looking for investment into the economy. Now, as it is, Greenland currently relies overwhelmingly on the sea for survival, with 90% of its exports coming from fishing. Greenland is located northeast of Canada and is largely covered by the Greenland ice sheet. It's the largest island in the world, but home to just 57,000 people, a semi-autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark with its own elected government. 89.5% of the population are Greenland Inuit, or 51,000. 7.5% are Danish, or 4,275, and 3% are folks from the rest of the world, including more Scandinavians, for a total of 1,710 in the population. So what does Trump have to say about all this? Well, he's got a few things to say about it. He said, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You don't even need binoculars. You look outside. You have Chinese ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. Folks, the Northwest Passage, or Northern Sea Route, was initially crossed in the winter months by a Russian commercial vessel several years ago. It's a shorter route linking East Asia's major ports to Europe and the Atlantic, far shorter than going across the Atlantic and through the Panama Canal to the Pacific. So much shorter and therefore very lucrative potentially for shipping. So what of the history of Greenland? Well, it's long been dominated by the Nordic countries. And after a millennium of Nordic hegemony, ties between the semi-autonomous territory and Denmark have been strained in recent years, presenting a window of opportunity for the United States to curry favor with a government perhaps intent on declaring its independence from colonial power that took possession of the world's largest island, and no, it's not a continent, over 200 years ago in 1814. Now, of course, Scandinavian hegemony in Greenland goes back much further to the time of Eric the Red, when in the year 986, he brought a contingent of 14 boats to the coast after being exiled from Iceland for manslaughter. Well, that's a good start. Now, allegedly, Eric tried to hoodwink settlers to his newfound and surprisingly nice locale by naming it Greenland, or Greenland, as opposed to Iceland. Now, Greenland's largest ethnic group are the Inuit, as I mentioned previously, and they call the territory Kalatlit Nunat, or Land of the Kalatlit. Now, eventually, Greenland was a thriving Norse territory with three main settlements, cleverly named, surprisingly, the Eastern, the Western, and the Middle Settlement, all based on fjords. Now, the predominant people present when they first arrived were part of the late Dorset culture, which is now long extinct. They were later displaced by the Thule culture that arrived in the north from Canada. Favorable climate conditions that allowed the Norse to initially thrive for centuries changed with the arrival of the Little Ice Age in the 15th century. All three Norse settlements eventually died out in the harsher climatic conditions. Now, lots of reasons have been postulated for their disappearance, including failure to adapt to the changing climate, or climate change, warfare with the Inuit, and abandonment of the colonies owing to land degradation or soil exhaustion. Now, the last is the most plausible, with folks going back to Iceland over a period of years as it became increasingly difficult to survive with the Norse economy in Greenland. While the Inuit did just fine, which was based on the sea in a different fashion, the original Greenland settlers were based on herding, not sea. Now, contemporary Greenland is a semi-autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark, who provides for the territory's foreign policy and national defense. Now, the United States has had a presence and role in Greenland since the Second World War, when on the 8th of April 1941, the U.S. occupied Greenland to prevent Germany from doing so after the Nazis conquered Denmark. The U.S. occupation ended in 1945 with the war's end. However, in 1950, Denmark allowed the U.S. to regain use of its World War II air base at Thule in the far northwest of Greenland. Greenlanders began seeking home rule, which came after a referendum in January 1979. After another referendum on greater autonomy in 2008, Greenlanders attained self-rule in June of 2009. Now, the U.S. military presence has not been controversy-free in Greenland. We secretly began building nuclear weapon sites in Greenland that were eventually abandoned as impractical back in the 1960s. However, in the 1990s, a government report revealed that Denmark had given tacit approval for the deployment of nukes, stirring a big controversy when that became public. On the 21st of January 1968, a B-52 bomber with 4 nuclear bombs aboard as part of Operation Chrome Dome crashed on the ice of the North Star Bay while attempting an emergency landing at Thule Air Base. The resulting fire caused extensive radioactive contamination, and one of the H-bombs was never recovered. That's a little frightening. So what's going to come of all this? Trump talking about buying Greenland. Is this even practical? Is it real? Is it a lark? I don't think it's a lark. I think Trump is serious.
But I can say this, we need them for economic security.
Well, so what's going to come of all this? Well, China is now on notice that under Trump, its presence in Greenland presents a national security threat, which is not tolerable. And number 2, it shows that Trump was genuine the first time around and that he is not simply trolling. Also, Brussels will waste time and energy working against NATO's best interest, which would be for the U.S. to actually gain possession of Greenland, just to go against Trump.
People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world.
Copenhagen has been put on notice. Your challenges are not just in appeasing Greenlanders who are hungry to escape your colonialism, but the possibility that Trump will actually encourage Greenland to go for independence.
I don't want to see Greenland falling out of Danish hands. I want it to be in good Viking hands still, but I also understand Donald Trump. I would have done the same, and I don't blame him. I don't blame him for wanting to take that strategically important area.
Now, Greenland could become a self-governing U.S. territory. It's not as crazy as the media claim, folks. Eritrea, Somaliland, Puntland, South Sudan, all have gained independence or at least proclaimed it. Why not Greenland? And there you have it. Will Trump get Greenland? I don't know. It's certainly an interesting story to talk about, and it'll keep us busy. I think the more fascinating story, and the one of much bigger concern for Trump, is the Chinese getting control of the Panama Canal. He's not going to sit for that. Now, I will confess I've never been to Greenland, but I have been to Iceland, the Faroe Islands, and the Orkneys. I've yet to get to Svalbard, Greenland, or the Shetlands, which are all on my bucket list. In the meantime, once Greenland becomes a U.S. territory, I won't need a visa to go there. I don't think I need one now. Maybe I do. I'm not sure. Anyway, folks, what are your thoughts? Feel free to leave them behind and have a happy new year. Cheers.